Now, guys, we've got an hour with you, so we are going to jump into this topic. So Mr. Edwards is going to take you through the first part, and we will discuss some of the concepts here today and see if we can make it as interesting for you as possible. Right, over to you, Mr. Edwards.
All right, so good afternoon, grade 12s, and thank you very much, Mr. Van Zyl. Welcome to this session today. This session is all about management and leadership. And a question that often comes up with regards to this section is comparing the two, management and leadership, and how do they differ? So we'll get into types of questions a little bit later, but first and foremost, we need to discuss and define each of these topics. All right, so we're going to have a look at management first. So you might have come across in your previous years doing business studies the acronym POLC: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So those are your 4 management tasks. Right, so if you were to define or asked in a test or an exam, please define management, that would be the answer that would be expected from you. Right. In the same way, if we ask you a question like define leadership, this is the type of question or answer that we'd expect from you. It refers to the ability of an individual or a group of individuals to influence and guide followers or other members of an organization. I want to bring your attention to the word influence. That is the main aspect about leadership and how it differs from management. And as I said, we'll get into that a little bit later. So those are the two definitions for those 2 topics, leadership and management. All right, so as I referred to earlier, this is a classic question that you could get for this section of work. Distinguish between management and leadership. Right, so let's have a look. The answer that you would normally be providing should be in table format. All right, so as you can see on the screen at the moment, that is exactly what we've provided for you. All right, also take note, you could be asked differentiate or distinguish between management and leadership. This question is best answered by drawing the table, as I mentioned earlier. So let's look at some of the differences that come up. With regards to leadership, the first thing is you lead by inspiring and motivating employees. Whereas management, okay, remember we need to make the distinction with these points, is the process by using his or her authority. So you are managing people based on the authority that's been given to you. Right, if we look at the next one, it says provide guidance and direction to employees. Okay, whereas management is instructional in his or her approach when dealing with employees. So it's very much top-down, instruction-based. Right, moving on to leadership, the third point there, promotes creativity to improve productivity levels. So it's encouraging your employees to use their own sense of will and in ensuring that the productivity levels increase. Okay, whereas on the other hand, management follows the plans to reach those targets. So again, management have put the instructions in place and employees are required to follow those instructions. Then we move on to focus on vision and mission of the organization. So the leadership are putting in place the vision and the mission of the business. That goes back to grade 10 business studies, first term. We spoke about the vision and the mission of an organization. Whereas management, you follow, or so you focus on the organization's targets. Okay, so target driven as opposed to the vision and the mission of the business. All right, then moving on to leadership's focus on potential of the employees. So what could the employees achieve? And hopefully the aim for leadership is to get the best and the most out of their employees. And the employees are striving to improve and reach those that potential. Whereas management is focusing on the processes involved in the production process. All right, moving on to the next one with regards to leadership. creative and innovative when dealing with challenges. So they're encouraging employees to be innovative and creative when solving problems. Okay, whereas you've got the management administers plans as set out by the top management. So it's again putting in place the instructions or implementing the instructions from your management group. Okay, the last one, you've got people orientated, that's leadership. Okay, thus putting employees first, whereas management is task orientated, ensuring that the job gets done. Okay, so when you're answering this question, often it's going to be for 4 marks. Okay, so that would tell you that you're going to need to give one difference. If it's for 8 marks, then you're going to get 2 differences. So often the answers that are provided here is people orientated versus task orientated. So if you were to give those answers as your differentiation, okay, then you would get 2 marks for the people orientated, thus putting employees first, and then you get your 2 marks for task orientated, ensuring the job gets done. So remember, mark allocation for this question is very important. Okay, it is a classic question, and I would imagine that you would get it either in your prelim or your end of year exam. So keep this one in mind.
Mr. Edwards, I also just want to remind them that when you see answers like this, it's always best to put in your ticks, because all differentiation questions and all distinguished questions will always be a split mark. So you can't have staccato answers. I agree with what Mr. Edwards have just said, that the mark allocation for these would either be 4 or 8. In a section C, it might count a bit more, but you don't really need all those marks. I would remember only 2 differences. You can see a lot of information there, and try to cram that into your brain is going to be senseless. It's best to try and get the 2 that makes the most sense to you, study those, and make sure you get the corresponding one from management as well. So the 2 must talk to one another, so to speak. The difference must be clear. Now, I just quickly want to show you, for example, this people-orientated one, how the mark is split. And I hope you can see my cursor there. People-orientated, your first mark will go there because that's a statement. Thus, putting employees first is your qualifier. That's your 2 marks. Now you need to give me the difference. Task-orientated in terms of management, that's your mark. And the qualifier would be to ensure that the job gets done. I also want to show you another big difference. And if that was me, I would have remembered the last one and the first bullet point. Lead by inspiring and motivating employees. So inspiring and motivating is your 1 mark. Employees is the other. And what is the difference? Management manage processes by using his or her authority. And guys, I just want to maybe just stand a bit on that authority. Authority is something that is given to you due to your position in the company, your legal standing in the business. That is your authority. I have a right to tell you what to do. But it doesn't help you have a right to tell people what to do and they still don't do it. That is where the leadership portion comes in. I must also be able to inspire and motivate them to do whatever I want them to do. So sometimes people see managers as evil, and that's not the way we do things, and leaders as these good and positive things. Guys, we need both of these. You need a manager that understands processes and systems and plans and all of those things. That is something that you get taught. And leadership is that ability to put those things into motion by motivating and inspiring people to follow those plans. So you need both of these things. I just think that it's important to say.
100%. And I think I'd like to add something there. Mr. Van Zyl referred to management often considered to be negative as opposed to leadership being a positive aspect. That's not necessarily the case. Both are appropriate depending on the context, depending on the staff that you've got. We'll go through some leadership styles a little bit later. But if you remember in EMS, back in grade 9 and 8, you talk about the different types of employees, the different types of labor that you've got. If you've got unskilled labor, often management is maybe more the appropriate because it's more instructional. People need to be instructed as to what they need to be doing. Okay, whereas leadership might not be appropriate. Okay, but we'll have a look at some leadership styles in a moment. Sometimes management is appropriate, sometimes leadership is appropriate. Let's have a look. All right, let's move on to those leadership styles. We have got 5 leadership styles that we're going to be talking about today. And please remember, we're going to talk about leadership theories a little bit later. Don't get confused between the two. Okay, leadership theories, we discussed 3 different theories, and now we are going to be discussing leadership styles. Right. Maybe as we're going through these leadership styles, there's a certain leader that comes to mind. Okay, we're going to discuss 1 or 2 that we feel are appropriate for this particular type of leadership style. So let's move on to democratic first. As you can see there, we've got a gentleman by the name of Richard Branson. He is a classic example of a democratic leader. Right, he asks his employees to be involved in the decision-making process. So let's look at the definition over there. A democratic leader involves employees in the decision-making process. This leadership style is also called participatory leadership style, and that's because your employees are participating. Right. There are advantages, there are disadvantages to this leadership style. Advantages is one advantage would be that your employees feel empowered because they're involved in the process, the decision-making process. A disadvantage may be that it takes a little bit of time. Okay, again, as I referred to in the previous slide, this might not be appropriate for certain situations. If you were in an emergency, might not be appropriate because it takes quite a bit of time. All right, let's have a look at how this process or how this leadership style is applied. Right, that's the table that is provided on screen at the moment. The leader knows his or her limitations and is open to new ideas. So they're happy to ask employees for their information, their opinions. And then employees are experienced or they're experts in their chosen field. So hence the reason why they're going to be asked to provide their opinions and their involvement in the decision-making process. So, for example, if I am a leader and for some odd reason I'm not IT proficient, I don't necessarily know what is happening with regards to a certain app that I'm supposed to be using, I would ask an employee that has experience in those sorts of things to assist. Right, so that would be democratic leadership style. And again, it is appropriate for certain circumstances when you've got experienced staff.
Mr. Edwards, I also want to just maybe say it is very important for us to distinguish between these leadership styles. Later on, we will do a leadership theory where we move between different leadership styles depending on the situation. Sure. We'll do that a bit later. But guys, a democratic leader, all of us that see this think, yeah, this is the kind of person, and all leadership styles must always be democratic. We all should have a say. But guys, it doesn't always help if you don't have people that can contribute to the decision-making process. With other words, they are limited in their experience or their knowledge, and they have nothing to contribute for you to make a decision. Then it is useless to be a Democrat. All you do is wasting time. So if you look at the next leadership style that we are going to do, I think that might be a bit more appropriate when you have unskilled employees or people with limited experience or limited knowledge, then that's more appropriate.
Right, so yes, we are going to move on to autocratic leadership style. And the gentleman on the right over there, Hitler, okay, he was considered to be an autocratic leader, okay, very instructional based. Okay, so you as an autocratic leader, you do not involve the employees in the decision-making process. Employees are told what to do and must implement the decisions of the leader without questioning his decision or his authority. And that's where the word autocratic comes comes from? Okay, it comes from the authority that you're gaining from being that leader. Right, we might discuss a little bit later, Hitler might be falling into a different leadership style as well. Okay, but let's have a look at how this leadership style is applied. If a crisis arises, there is immediate action that is required. Hence the reason the leader is required to make the decision. You're not going to be asking for opinions or people to provide their decisions or their ideas to the process, because a decision needs to be made right now, and you depend on that leader to make that decision. In the event of an emergency occurring, that requires the leader to act immediately. Also, what happens here is if you've got unskilled staff, they need direction. They're not necessarily going to have the expertise, as we referred to earlier in democratic leadership style. They don't necessarily have those expertise to have a say, to give an opinion, a skilled opinion. So that might not be appropriate. An emergency or crisis that might come to mind would be a sinking ship or a fire. A decision needs to be made as to what needs to be done. So autocratic leadership style would be appropriate in that instance. All right, moving on to the next leadership style, laissez-faire, or often referred to as free rein leadership style. Okay, this is where the person in that leadership position delegates, okay, provides the decision making to their employees, because there is a trust. Again, depends on the context, depends on what you're dealing with and which employees you are dealing with as well. The leader separates him or herself from the decision making process and allows employees to make decisions in the best interest of the organization. Okay, this depends on your staff being skilled, being committed, being honest, and also having trust between your employer and your employee. Okay, it does involve your employees being innovative, being creative, so you can understand that for certain employees, this is fantastic, this is great, and you get the best out of your employees. Let's see how it's applied in practice. The leader is busy with important aspects of the business and then needs to delegate his or her duties to their employees. So maybe they just don't have time as leaders or managers of the business to actually deal with certain aspects of the business. So that's when they are going to delegate. The employees are experienced or highly skilled in their chosen field. So therefore, they are trusted that they are going to do their job, and they're going to be doing it to the best of their ability, and the job will get done. So often what I say here is that the ability is given to your employees, and just almost a timeline is provided to the employees that the job needs to be done by this stage, and the employees have free rein to decide how it's going to be done. The classic example there, Steve Jobs, yes, he did tell the employees as to how he would like it to be done, but he allowed his employees to have free rein and decide how it's going to be done, how the task is going to be done. And the example is there. Apple has been highly successful and innovative over the last 20 years and are really at the forefront of technology because of the ability for the employees to be innovative, and they're incentivized sometimes to be innovative as well. All right, so that's laissez-faire. Moving on to charismatic leadership style, right? There are numerous examples of this. Nelson Mandela, the example that I've provided there is Barack Obama. A charismatic leader uses his or her personality and charm to influence the behavior and actions of the employees, right? So the employees are led by this charismatic leader. Okay, employees are inspired by the energy and the keenness of the charismatic leader. So often they're leading by example. Okay, some aspects where it would be applied, the organization wants to implement changes and it uses the leader to get the support of the employees. Okay, because there is a trust that because this leader is keen and energetic, they will be keen to follow his example, right? There's a confidence in the abilities of that leader. All right, so the confidence levels of the employees are low, but because of that leader, the ability to pull their employees into the vision and the mission of the business. Right, then we move on to transactional leadership style. Right, so transactional leader would be someone, sorry, I do see that that is incorrect over there, but a transactional leader is one that incentivizes. It gives rewards to the employees, which requires the employees to achieve certain goals in order to get a reward. So how is it applied? The transactional leader wants employees to exceed target levels, so they will get a reward if they do that. Okay, the leader wants employees to adhere to deadlines that are shorter. So maybe they've been told by the employees that they need to complete a task before a certain period. Okay, so they'll say, well, are you willing as an employee to work an extra hour so that you can complete the task? And because you're doing that, you're going to get overtime pay. So in many instances, overtime pay is a reward, and that is part of transactional leadership style. Okay, the example that's given there with regards to the image, you dangling that carrot, which is an incentive to your employees. Yes, Mr. Francis.
I just want to say also with transactional, I know that we've got the wrong description there, but that doesn't matter because I'm going to tell you what a transaction is. Transaction means you doing something for me and I do something for you. An exchange of these two things, we both benefit. And that is what transactional means. The leader tells the employees that if you do something for me, I will make life worthwhile for you. A bonus or, as Mr. Ed would say, overtime pay or whatever that will benefit you. But you need to exceed your target before you can get that. Commission oftentimes also work like that. But then, guys, there's a flip side to this. There is also, if I don't do or I don't get to my targets, there are definite, almost punishments in place that will deter you from being lazy or not doing the work that you want to do. Okay, so that's transactional leaders. That's exactly that image, the carrot and the stick.
All right, so ladies and gents, those are the 5 different leadership styles that we come across in business studies. Right, we're going to look at the impact of those leadership styles. Now, remember, when we talk about the impact of leadership styles, we're talking about the disadvantages and advantages, okay, with regards to those leadership styles. I have mentioned 1 or 2 as we've gone through the different leadership styles, so you might recall 1 or 2 as I'm going through.
Mr. Edwards, also, I just want to add before we get to the impact, guys, you will see a lot of information in the next slides, but it is going to be very important for you to not to try and study everything. You're not going to make it. I think if you remember 2 positives and 2 negatives, it covers you for the event that they ask you for only negatives or only positives, which I never think they would. If you ask the impact, you can either respond positively or negatively or both. If you remember 2 positives and 2 negatives, it will cover you for a section C with sufficient information. And in section B, the chances that a question counts 8 marks is very limited, and you will mostly get a 6-mark or a 4-mark question, and you should be covered there. So remember 2 positives and 2 negatives, and try to get those ones that are easily remembered. And the ones that are normally easily remembered are ones that make sense to you. Don't just go for the shortest sentence if it doesn't make sense what the sentence say. You need to remember the sentence because it makes sense to you. You can relate it to the topic, and that is what's going to make the difference in you remembering the stuff and not. Okay, so please don't go and try and remember all of these facts that we are going to show you right now.
Right, so as Mr. Van Zyl said, there's quite a great deal of information that has been provided there. All right, so we've got our advantages that are on the left of the screen, okay, and then your disadvantages that are on the right of the screen. So Remember, democratic, okay, we spoke about that it allows people to be involved in the decision-making process. They might be motivated because of that, but at the same time, it takes a little bit of time. So let's have a look at the first advantage over there. The leaders do not have to rely on their own knowledge because they're going to get information from others. Okay, then looking at employees are feeling motivated, resulting in greater productivity levels. Please remember, when you are doing advantages and disadvantages, it's different to your distinguish. So you don't necessarily need to have one advantage and then one disadvantage associated with each other. Right, so just keep that in mind. Moving on to the next bullet for the advantages. Regular communication between leaders and employees leads to improved decision making. So you are often in communication with your employees, and leaders will benefit from this, but also your employees are continuously motivated to add more to their experience. All right, then input from inexperienced employees, these are the disadvantages, could lead to decisions that do not benefit the business. All right, so that can be a negative, right? Because the inexperienced employees might not have the ability or the skills to actually provide relevant information. Leaders may not be in the best position to take decisions immediately, okay, because key employees are unable to attend meetings, right? So those employees that should be providing information or providing their opinions aren't available, so it just delays the decision-making process. All right, and the last one over there, the reliability of feedback provided by some employees may not be accurate. So an employee might have an opinion, but it's maybe not backed up by facts. Okay, and you would need to actually do a little bit of fact checking before actually taking that information on. All right,
okay. Guys, I also want to just reiterate, just for the sake of exam skill,
sure.
This question will also be asked in terms of, or marked in terms of a split mark, right? And you need to make a statement and a qualifier. I'm going to take 2 or 3 of these sentences to put in a statement, qualifier, split mark for you. And I would implore you, when we do the next, to do the same with those. And you can think where the statement and the qualifier is. Now, I'm going to show you quickly. This second bullet over there that says employees feel motivated. That's 1 mark. Now you're going to tell me whether it's an advantage or a disadvantage, or why it is an advantage. Now you see, this is advantages. Employees feel motivated. Why are they feeling? What is going to be your benefit? Resulting in increased productivity levels. That's the benefit, and that's the advantage. Right, so that's your second mark. So I want you to go to all the other bullet points and put in your tick marks, or the ones that you choose. Go and put in where the statement and the qualifier is. I'll do one more for you. The reliability of feedback provided by some employees. That's a statement. What is the problem there? Because this is now disadvantages. It may not be accurate. That is your second mark. So guys, you need to write in full sentences and not staccato sentences, because you might know all the work but then only get half your marks. So make sure that you work your answers correctly and you word it correctly.
All right. So remember your statement, qualifier, statement and then your qualifier, or your statement and then a further explanation. All right. So keep that in mind if you are looking for the 2 marks. Okay. The next one is autocratic. And remember, we said this might be considered a bit of a negative one, but sometimes it's appropriate. But let's have a look at the advantages first. The leader can take quick decisions without consulting employees. So again, certain circumstances, certain contexts, this would be appropriate. Strict monitoring of production processes by the leader ensures quality products and services. Okay, so again, there's probably a great deal of quality control that goes into this leadership style, autocratic leadership style. Clear direction from the leader provides certainty to the new employees, and employees appreciate that. They know what's expected of them. They know what quality the products are, what's expected of the quality of the products. All right, so in that sense, it is a positive. It is an advantage. Disadvantages, though, Tension could arise between leaders and employees if there are disagreements on strategies. So the leaders have made a decision and the employees might disagree with that. So that could cause a little bit of conflict, a little bit of tension amongst your staff. Right. Employees could become frustrated if their inputs are not considered. If you have employees that have skills, they have the ability and experience to provide information and their opinion, they're going to get frustrated because their opinion is not being considered. Okay, so that I'm sure many of you would find a little bit frustrating if you've been put in that position. And then lastly, the organization could lose out on innovative ideas from employees because the employees have not been considered. Their opinions have not been brought to the table. Okay, so sometimes ideas that would be appropriate and would provide innovation would not be considered in this instance. Okay, laissez-faire, again, if we were to ask many of our learners, they would say, I'd prefer laissez-faire because you're given the trust, you're given the ability to be innovative and creative. But let's have a look at the advantages there. Employees are trusted and given the responsibility of making decisions in areas of their own expertise. So they are trusted. That trust aspect goes a long way to satisfying your employee. Motivation levels of employees increases because the leader recognizes their ability. Okay, so they're able to, they believe in the ability of their employee. Employees experience personal growth as they are allowed to make their decisions on their own. Okay, so if you're able to make your own decisions, you are growing as a staff member, and you can contribute to the innovation of the business and the growth of the business itself. Disadvantages though, the uncertainty regarding clear decision making could influence the morale of employees. Many employees need direction, they need instruction in order to achieve their goals. If they aren't given that instruction, it could be frustrating. Employees may find it difficult to get fellow members to meet deadlines. Okay, maybe you've been in a group situation where this has been the case because certain employees might not be as motivated as you are. Productivity levels may decrease if the employees lack skills necessary to make the right decisions. So again, this laissez-faire approach is dependent on the type of employee that you have. Is the employee skilled? Are they trustworthy? Those are imperative. They're very important with regards to this laissez-faire leadership approach. It also takes a long time in order for these sorts of things to take place, decisions to make under the leadership style. Moving on to charismatic leadership style. You've got a leader communicates their goals of the organization in a clear manner and they inspire confidence amongst their employees. So there's motivation amongst your employees. That would be a fantastic advantage as a charismatic leader. Employees are inspired by the passion of the charismatic leader and they're willing to follow that person because of the passion that they show. Employees are motivated to exceed their own expectations and overcome their own fears because they see that their leader is leading by that example. Disadvantages though, a leader may promote his or her own personal interests instead of the leading of the to the benefits, instead of leading for the benefit of the organization, because they've as you'll see a little bit later, they talk about the arrogance that may come from a charismatic leader. Okay, so they might have their personal interests as a focus and not the business's interests at the fore. Employees rely on the leader to improve their morale levels as opposed to them actually motivating themselves. They're very dependent on the leader. And if that leader moves on, as you'll see in the final bullet there, if the leader moves on or leaves the business, they are seen as over-reliant on that leader for success in the business, for motivation. and you might have a completely different leadership style that comes in, and suddenly the employees don't necessarily know how to deal with that new leader. All right, so that's charismatic leader. And then last but not least, transactional leader. All right, the advantages here: linking rewards to targets encourages workers to work effectively and maybe exceed their abilities because they want to achieve and get that reward. Employees are given targets, and that they know the targets they need to work towards. So they're very instruction based. They know what they need to achieve, which can be a positive. Employees are aware of the punishments should targets not be met. So they know if they are unable to achieve their targets, then there will be a resulting punishment or negative reinforcement, as they also refer to. Disadvantages here: employees may feel demoralized if they're punished for not meeting targets. Okay, so any respect, if you do not meet targets and you're punished for that, I mean, as at school, possibly that you have not reached your targets and you get detention, you feel demoralized. You don't feel motivated to achieve. So that can be a negative aspect there. Leaders may need to monitor the performance of employees to ensure that targets are met. Okay, so if you think of sales targets, I mean, many of the big organizations require big management systems in order to show what people's targets are, what the employees' targets are, and are they achieving those targets. Okay, so that can take a bit of time and capital to actually set up. All right, the health of employees could be negatively affected by increased stress levels because people are not achieving their targets. Okay, and that results in stress, and often that the ultimate result there is absenteeism and less productivity. All right, so that can be the final disadvantage for transactional leadership style. Please take note here: when you are required to answer questions on the impact, you could either provide only the advantage or disadvantage, or you could provide both. So just keep that in mind when answering a question about discuss the impact or explain the impact of something. Okay, you can provide advantages, you can provide disadvantages, or you can give us a combination of both in this instance. And remember, this could be 4, 6 marks, something along those lines. You won't often get a question like this that would be 10 marks. So please use the mark allocation as a guide as to how much information you give in these questions. As Mr. Van Zyl referred to earlier, you could give, remember, maybe 2 or 3 examples of advantages and disadvantages, and that should be sufficient for a Section B type question. All right, so this brings me to the end of the impact of leadership styles. I'm going to hand over to Mr. Van Zyl, who's going to discuss the leadership theories.
Right. Okay, guys, I'm going to discuss the leadership theories with you. And if you can see in the first slide here, a very big nota bene, that means very important. Do not confuse leadership theories with leadership styles. We have just done the 5 leadership styles that you guys need to know. And the next are 3 leadership theories. Now, guys, a theory is what people ascribe to. It's my, how can I say, what I believe in. That is my theory. And there's different theories, and somewhere in between lies the truth, kind of thing. So a theory is not a specific style. It is it's something that we believe we should do. Okay, so that is a leadership theory. Maybe I'm confusing you now completely. Okay, now guys, as you can see there, the note, you must be able to identify the following leadership theories from given scenarios, case studies, and statements, and that mostly comes from the description. So you need to look for certain clues in the description in your case study or the scenario in order to correctly identify the leadership theory. So right, the first one that we are, or the 3 leadership theories that we are going to do, if they ask you a question like state 3 leadership theories or name, then you need to name these 3. Transformational or transitional leadership, situational, and leaders and followers. Those are the only 3 that you need to know. So please remember that. Okay, Now, guys, the first one that I'm going to do is transformational. The other word for it, of course, is transitional. It means the same thing. And I'm going to look at Mr. Steve Jobs over there. He seems to feature quite a bit because he was a very innovative person. Right. So, guys, in terms of the transformational theory, it is a leadership theory. Would be adopted by the leader during a period in which the organization is experiencing radical changes. Now, guys, in grade 11, you guys have learned about change management. Now, a good transformational leader is somebody that understands that process of change and leads people through that process of change, because not everybody buys into change that easily. Right. The next bullet point is, if I can just get it up here, the leader may use his communication skills with employees to convince employees to accept the changes that are planned. Now, guys, they are very, very motivational and inspirational people that get people to trust them and to trust a process of change. Right. The next one. The employees, in turn, admire the leader. It's very, very much like a charismatic leadership thing. But remember, this is a theory. It's a person that can influence people very easily to accept any changes, right? Because the leader is trusted, and they trust them with the judgment about the planned changes, right? It's a strategic thinking leader. Use this leadership theory to convince employees to accept a long-term vision of the organization, and leaders have strong and charismatic personalities that they use to increase the productivity levels of workers. Now, guys, you will never be asked to explain a leadership theory in that much detail. Once again, if you can remember let's make it 3 of these bullet points, then you are set to go. Please don't go and try and cram all of this information in. If you think back to the picture that you see there, Steve Jobs and the slogan, "Think Different," that is what he actually did. And he made a whole change, not just in his organization, but actually the way the world works. The computer that we are using here today was made possible by a person that was a forward thinker, and he had to get people to accept the changes that's happening in life, actually, not just in one organization. Right. So I'm moving on to the next one, and that is a personal leadership theory that I ascribe to, and that is situational leadership. Now, before I put the theory on, guys, situational leadership, the word situation explains all of it. It is dependent on the situation what leadership style I would. Now, remember, I said leadership style. So let's say I am normally a democratic leader, but now there's a fire in the building. I am becoming an autocrat. I'm telling people what they need to do in that crisis situation. There's no time to ask for opinions and strategize and all of these things. It must just be happening. So then you become an autocrat. I actually want to go a bit further, because if you look at the theory of this, if you go and study it a bit further, it would say it's about the maturity level of your employees. Now, guys, new employees are very unsure about what they need to do, what their role in the organization is, and so forth. And in that case, we are going to be more autocratic. We are going to tell them what they need to do and how they need to do it until they are comfortable. And then we move on to democratic leadership style, and you ask them for their input and things like that. And then at one point, these guys are so okay with what they do, you don't need to check up on what they're doing. Then you become laissez-faire. So that is how it changes as the employee becomes more mature in the work that they do. So this is how you need to see situational leadership. Right. The first bullet point there, of course, says leaders are required to manage employees under different conditions, and different character traits are required to deal with each situation within the workplace. We are not going to treat everybody exactly the same. The situation will dictate what kind of leadership style I will adopt. Right. A different leadership style would be adopted by the leader based on the prevailing circumstances at a particular time. And effective leaders may adopt a leadership style that will ensure that the goals of the organization are achieved. Okay, and then of course it's all about the relationship between the leader and employees, and that is also based on the value of trust. Okay, now guys, the last leadership theory that we are going to do is called leaders and followers. Right, now leaders and followers is about the relationship between the leader and the employees, and you can see I've made that bold. It's about the relationship between the leader and the employees, and that has a major impact on the goals that the organization has set out to achieve. Right, employees as followers of the leader follow the instructions of the leader and collectively works towards the organization goals, just like the picture illustrates there. Right, leaders allow followers to be creative and encourage them to explore alternative methods to increase productivity. Right, and leaders lead by example. Now guys, this is all about, as I say, that relationship between the leader and the followers. It's not somebody that sits in a closed office and just barks out instructions. That's not how it works. What they do is they are side by side and they work together with their followers. They don't see themselves as being above anybody else. Right, so they lead by example and provide incentives for positive behaviors. And then, of course, they take responsibility for the goals that are not achieved. Right, and that is leaders and followers. Now, guys, these are the three leadership styles, and I just want to reiterate again, please do not confuse them with leadership or theories. Don't confuse the theories with the styles, because sometimes I see this oftentimes that a question would ask, identify the leadership style, and you guys go and identify a leadership theory. Then that is wrong, and even the motivation that you give can't be marked because you haven't actually answered the question, and it could end up costing you dearly. So please make sure that you don't confuse these things. Right.
So, Mr. Van Zyl, if I could just add something there. So a classic way that this would be asked, both leadership styles and leadership theories, is by giving a scenario. So they would give you a scenario, and using the definition that you know, you would be asked, in the scenario, please identify the leadership theory, for example. And in the text, you would see that they've given characteristics of the leadership theory situation. Maybe there was the leader has had to change the way they have approached a certain employee because they're unskilled or they're new, and then another employee, they've had to implement a different leadership style. So then that would tell you that you're looking at a situational. So you need to know the definitions so that you can identify from a scenario which leadership theory they are talking about. Right, so that would be a type of question that you could get in this section.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Now, guys, I'm going to move on to another question that you might get, and that is normally in the form of explain or discuss the role of personal attitude in successful leadership. Now, guys, attitude refers to the way in which a manager or a leader performs their tasks. Is it positive? Is it negative? Those kind of things. That is your attitude. Right. Now, I would be putting my head on a block to say you don't need to remember more than three. Three of these things should be enough for a section B question. So let's just have a look at some of the responses. Exceptional leaders will ensure that the environment at work is filled with a positive attitude. That is one mark. Starting from him or her. That is the second mark. Where does the positive environment start? Guys, if the leader is always in a bad mood, always yelling and screaming, that sets the tone for all of them downstairs. And that also means that the work environment is not healthy. So a good and functioning work environment starts with the leader. Okay, and they realize that that is the case. Okay, the next one, a positive attitude from the leader may have a positive effect on the employees. And what is the positive of that? It results in increased levels of motivation. Remember, leadership is all about inspiration and motivation. And anything that you can do, any environment that you can create that can increase motivation means that you are succeeding as a leader. Right, the next one. A negative attitude from the leader may have a converse negative effect on the employees as well. This is about morale. Employees must see the type of behavior they are required to adopt and display at the workplace displayed by the leader. The same way you would like to be treated or what you want your employees to do, you must also do. So that is very important. And then the last one, successful leaders allocate responsibilities to employees based on the knowledge of the employees. Guys, there is nothing more demotivating by giving someone things that they are not capable of doing. It increases the stress levels tremendously, and that means the morale also falls. There's also something else in the converse. If you continuously give people work to do that is below their ability, then that is also demotivating and demoralizing, and those people are probably going to leave. And that is not a very productive workplace if that happens. Right. Now, guys, that brings us to the end of management and leadership. We have a couple of minutes left, and I just quickly want to go through some sample questions with you. And if I have time, I want to show you how to do the essay question. I'm not going to do that per se, but just show you how it must be constructed. So I'm going to go through this rather quickly. Right, so there's some example questions that we are going to do. The first one is indicate. Now, indicate is actually a middle order question because there's a scenario and you need to match a leadership style to that. Indicate which of the following statements refer to leadership or management. Okay, lead by inspiring and motivating employees. Now, guys, we're going to start by just drawing a line under the code words there, inspiring and motivating, and you guys know from the definitions, the moment that I see inspiring and motivating, we are referring to leadership. The next one is focus on the processes involved. Now, guys, the processes is the code word there. Processes are also associated with something called management. And then the other one, focus on the potential of employees. Now, guys, that means this person is humanly orientated, people orientated, and that refers to leadership. Right, that is the one question. I'm going to move on to question 2. Indicate the leadership style or theory referred to in the statements below. A leader uses his personality and charm. Now, guys, you can already see the word charm there, and that will lead you to the answer, and that of course is a charismatic leader. Leader involve employees in the decision-making process. Involve employees, that means they can also give an input, and that leads to you to democratic leadership. Adopted by the leader during a period in which the organization would experience radical change. Adopted tells me that it is a theory, and the radical change leads me to the correct theory, which is, of course, transformational leadership. Right, there's one more such question. It says, indicate the leadership styles in which the following situations could be applied. The business appointed new employees that could benefit from this type of leadership style. Now, guys, we've gone through this. The new employees, remember, they are not sure what to do. So the best one there is autocratic leadership. The next one, confidence levels of employees are low and employees need to be inspired. Right, that inspiration is needed. So I need an incentive. And the one that does incentives is transactional leadership styles. Right, and then teamwork is promoted and the inputs of employees are valued, and that, of course, is democratic leadership. Right, there we go. Now, guys, I think I have one more minute, and I just quickly want to go through how to answer an essay question. I'm going to do it as quick as possible. Now, guys, an essay question, you're going to read your leading statement, and you cannot copy anything from your leading statement into an introduction or the body or whatever, because we're going to mark it as a repeat. The next one, I need to write an introduction. Now, guys, you see there that I've said the word introduction must be there. You must write it, and that doesn't include any of these bullet points that you see there. That is not part of the introduction. That is part of the body. Right, and then you can see there, all of these headings, or all of these bullet points, the separated questions, are headings in the body of the essay. It is not an introduction or a conclusion. And many times people would write the first bullet point as an introduction. Please don't do that, because you're going to lose silly marks. An introduction counts a maximum of 2 marks, and sometimes those questions can count up to 8 or 10 marks. Okay, guys, I've just been said that we are done. The last one just says you must write a conclusion, and the word conclusion must be there. Now, guys, that brings me to the end of this presentation. Thank you very much for sitting through with us. Thank you, Mr. Edwards, for
Thank you, Mr.
this productive session. And guys, I hope that it's going to go well with you for the rest of the year.